Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Parashat Pointers for Parashat Tazriah. We have two wonderful dedications. I want to thank Mr. Leo Badash for dedicating in honor of his wife and children. And also, I am dedicating it in honor of Alan R. Ashkenazi, a good friend of mine. Thank you for all that you do for Klal Yisrael. This week's Parasha talks about Tzara'at. We all know about Tzara'at. It is a type of boil that actually doesn't start on the skin, as we're going to discuss now. If a person does one of many possible averot, whether it be stinginess or other things, but mostly we're talking about speaking lashon hara, speaking evil about another Jew, a person will get sara'at, a type of boil that grows. It starts first on the house, and then it goes on the belongings, and then it actually goes on the person to wake them up to the averah that they're doing. It's very interesting, as it's explained, that when a person would get sara'at on their house, something amazing would happen. You see, as you probably have heard, in Canaan, the non-Jews that lived there before the Jews came, they hid all of their treasures, jewelry, gold in their walls because they were worried what's going to be. So they don't want the Jews to come and attack and get all of our riches. And now the Jews conquered the land of Israel, and now they're living in those homes. And all of a sudden, this Jewish person, he gets sara'at on his house, and he has to dislodge the bricks and take them out because they're sara'at. You've got to take it apart. And now when he opens up the wall, he looks inside, and what does he find? Treasures. And everybody's puzzled. I don't understand. This person did an averah, spoke lashon hara, did the wrong thing. They get a punishment, and what does the punishment turn into? A treasure. What's going on over here? Why should the first warning of an averah bring such good news? What message is Hashem giving us? What can we learn from this unbelievable materialistic discovery? So it's a big message. Hashem's sending this person the following idea. He's basically telling them like this. When you speak lashon hara about somebody, you make a judgment call. You see this person is just acting in a very uncomely. They're acting without basic decency. Whether it's against Hashem or other people, it's just acting terribly. You make a judgment call. This guy's a bad guy. But if you would go a little bit deeper, you might see that there's something more to that person. Just see where he's coming from. But we don't always do that. We don't always look what's really inside of every person. And we don't look for the beauty in every person. So we make that judgment call. That's human nature. We don't dig deeper. A guy does something horrible and screams at somebody in public. We don't say, what's underneath this person? No, he's bad. I'll give you a quick story, though. This story is a beauty. There's a Holocaust survivor who went through a very difficult time through the war. And now he comes to a point where he's anti-shul, doesn't want to go and pray, doesn't want to do anything. And he would stay in his house, and he was anti-religion. And his wife used to beg him, okay, it's over. Let's come back. Go to shul again. Let's get back on our feet. He absolutely refused. He used to read his newspaper every morning. One Shabbat morning, his wife says, listen, you're reading the newspaper. Do me a favor. Go to the shul and read your newspaper in the shul. Go to the back row and just read it there. At least you'll be in shul. And he goes, and he sits there, and everyone else is praying, and he's sitting there reading a newspaper. And day in and day out, he started going now every day, and he read his newspaper in shul. And one day, he started praying a little bit, and then he started opening up a siddur. After a while, he became a full-fledged member of the minyan, praying and getting back on track and close to Hashem once again. Could you imagine if somebody saw a person in the back of the shul reading a newspaper and didn't know the full story? And they would scream at him, get out of here, what are you doing? Could you imagine? How horrible would that be? Yet, if you would know the full picture that this man survived the Holocaust, and going to shul with that newspaper was the first step to get him back close to Hashem once again, you would never make a comment. In fact, you would say to him, wow, it's unbelievable you're even sitting here in the shul. So, we don't do that. But it's the same thing over here. When this person sees the affliction on the house, it looks ugly. Hashem says, but look beyond that exterior and see the inside. You're going to find a treasure. And that's what's going on with you. You're speaking about people. You're judging people. You don't see what's underneath. But let's go a little bit deeper. We don't only judge other people, but we also judge ourselves every single day. When we don't do the things that we want to do, we don't feel that we're growing in the way we want to grow, right away we get very down on ourselves. Anytime a person sins, it's because he doesn't realize his greatness. If you would truly know who you are, how great you are, that you have Hashem in you, that Hashem loves you, you would never come to sin. You could never even think of it. It's beyond you. It's so below where you're holding. That could be what it means when the Gemara says that a person only sins if a ruach shtut comes into his mind. Insanity. You to sin? Crazy. But the Yetzer Hara wants you to get depressed and say, who am I? I'm worthless anyway. What's the difference what I do? Just do. That's the number one strategy of the Yetzer Hara. When we raise our children, very often we forget the greatest motivation to ensure that they know how great they are is for them to understand that they're a prince of Hashem. That's who they are. And by the way, there's halachic ramifications of this idea. There's a Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat, in Perek Yud Dalet, over there, it talks about the different things you could do and like to medicinally help you, right? But it looks normal. Like if you have a toothache, you could have a little bit of a drink of, let's say, whiskey. If it looks like derech of drinking, it's the way of drinking. So too, if your muscles are hurting and you're going to rub yourself with something that's normally rubbed on a daily basis, it's okay to do it on Shabbat. That's what the Mishnah says. And it talks about oil, but then it talks about rose water. It says, oh no, rose water? Nah, that's not normal. That people are going to know you have something wrong with you because that only princes take rose water. Regular people don't use rose water. So when you're going to put the rose water, everyone's like, oh, it must be that he's sick. He's doing it for medicinal purposes. That's not allowed on Shabbat. Comes Rabbi Shimon and says, every Jew is a prince. So that means you can do it on Shabbat. Halachic. You see what's going on over there. And the rabbis tell us when the Yetzer Hara is fighting you and trying to get you to sin, there's three things you got to do. The first thing is, you got to learn Torah. If the Yetzer Hara is still overpowering you, the next thing you got to do, says the Gemara in Berachot, is say Shema. And if that doesn't work, then think of the day of death, and hopefully it will scare you to know that you're going to have to give, a reckoning for what you're doing. And the Mahasha in the back of the Gemara is very bothered. Like, just go straight, go for the kills. Think of the day of death. Okay, that will wake you up. But he says that's not going to work. That's going to depress a person. Because the way to build up a person is to first let them understand who they are. I learned Torah, it tells me what I am. I have the mitzvot, I have Hashem filling me. I say Shema, I realize that there's a king and he's my father. At that point, that's the way we want to motivate our children to do the right thing. To see the treasure within. So this idea of the person who speaks Sarah, it's not only about other people, it's about himself. Know how great you are, know how great every Jew is, but really know how great you are. The job we have as parents, and this is so important, is to make sure that our children understand and know how great they are. So they should never even think of doing the wrong thing. The treasure that a Mitzorah finds, that's the message. You are great. You are wonderful. Let's teach our precious children this important idea. Shabbat Shalom.